Welcome back, guys, to another episode of Three Markets, the Prediction Market Traders podcast. Matt, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Even better now that we have Caliph here.
Right, we have an absolute treat for the audience today. It is the first ever Three Markets guest interview.
Woo!
Caliph, am I saying that right?
Yes, Caliph. Yeah,
Caliph, welcome to Three Markets. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm really excited to be here. I love what you guys have been doing, and yeah, take it away. I guess.
Yeah, so Caliph has is super involved in prediction markets, in the prediction market scene. But what caught my eye, Caliph, and why I originally DM'd you and asked if you wanted to jump on the pod was this thread that went a little bit viral, I think, on prediction market Twitter. How much money would Professor Jang make if bet on prediction markets? For those who don't know, Professor Jang, I hope I'm saying that right, is the author of the Predictive History YouTube channel. So I had already been watching his videos before I saw your thread, which is kind of part of the reason it caught my eye. I feel like this guy went a little bit viral like 3 or 4 months ago for the accuracy of his predictions. Is that kind of right, Kyle?
Yeah, he went during the entire Iran saga with Israel and getting struck by the U.S. striking their nuclear centers. He was going pretty viral because he made a lot of claims in all of his earlier lectures that were very similar to what actually unfolded. And people kind of began digging through some of his older videos and seeing how events unfolded. And he had a very accurate world model. So I felt like it might be worth looking into. His predictions might be worth looking into.
Yeah. And his channel, I think, the name of the channel, Predictive History, is a little bit of a hint at his world model, as you mentioned, right? Like he takes a very history-informed approach to predicting the future. I think he's often compares the decline of empires in the West to the decline of ancient empires, or even conflicts, geopolitical conflicts today to geopolitical conflicts from the Greek or Roman empires. Which I'm sure he's not the first person to do this, but that's kind of his whole meat and butter is let's look to the past to figure out kind of the moment we're in now, right?
Right. And I think I should mention, sorry to interrupt. I think that it's really interesting to also preface this saying that he's not necessarily operating with an ideology in mind, right? He's using he's zooming out and looking at history from a game theory perspective. So he's imagining what all the different participants in these scenarios would be thinking and what they want to accomplish by doing certain actions, and then using that to base his predictions off of. So, I guess that's some context.
That's spot on. You're right.
That was actually going to be one of my questions too, around what their background was. I actually haven't seen these videos, so a bit of a mistake on my part. But because I wonder if with some of these videos, if these predictions weren't correct, if these would just be yet another set of YouTube videos that just go down the drain. Where it seems like if he takes a game theory approach and some of the methods that he might use to analyze these situations, it sounds like it's promising and still educational, even if some of these predictions don't come to light.
Yeah, definitely a lot of it is game theory, right? I guess it feels like a mix between taking elements from history and using that as kind of a lens, but then game theorying out how will different actors. I think that was part of his video that did accurately predict the Israel-Iran conflict, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that it makes it, the reason that interested me was because he has a very solid framework. Not necessarily, it's not explicitly discussed, but he has a pretty solid framework for how he extrapolates out information or predictions. And I was thinking that if you want to trade in prediction markets, you need something similar. You need to be able to have a world model and have a attention to detail to be able to create these proper predictions. And I was thinking the best way to see how right he was and see how effective this model is just backtesting it and seeing if he made some dough. So
yeah, let's jump into the thread that you published. Do you want to just walk us through parts of this for the audience who's listening? Caliph wrote on x.com, Twitter, how much money would Professor Jiang make if bet on prediction markets? I analyzed his predictions and backtested them against real markets on Kalshi and Polymarket to see how he would have performed, and then goes on to break down the lectures and actually calculate a P&L. Do you want to walk us through a few of these?
Yeah, so I should give some like, the basic context and rules for the thread are that we're going to be looking at his geostrategy series, which is the one that kind of went viral couple of months ago. And it also has the most time from now to the time that it was released. It's about a year and a half. So there's some, we could see like the passage of time and the events that actually happened compared to his newer videos where, things are still unfolding. And we're also going to be only like betting like straight bets. We're not going to be doing any like calculations of like unit sizing or like bankroll management and stuff, just so we can like keep it simple and visualize the stuff that's important, which is in this case is predictive power. So we're assuming that he's going to be betting $1,000 per big claim, and yeah, that's the first part.
I'm curious, when breaking out or when kind of like sussing out the claims from each of these videos, was this like more of like a manual process of kind of like, okay, let's look at these videos and kind of get a sense of what their claim was? Was there anything that you used to help kind of like automate some of that?
Yeah, so this is actually really interesting. I considering writing a thread on it. This was kind of a experimentation in like seeing how well AI can deduce like, or I guess like extract information from these like large bodies of text, right? So my method or workflow was taking all the actual videos, generating like a transcript from them, and then using AI to extract the amount of times that a claim is made, or and then sourcing that. And it sounds like kind of trivial, but if you imagine at scale, right, you have all these different writers or bloggers and things like that. You can manually like extract their claims or extract their predictions using AI, and be able to use that information to place some bets and stuff like that. So this was that's the kind of method. And there was some issues. I did have to go through and like manually make sure that things were said and stuff like that. But yeah, that's kind of the process.
This is awesome. I've been wanting to do this with Stephen A. Smith's claims for like sports. For those who don't know,
Yeah.
very hyperbolic sports commentator. And like that's actually one of the things that got me back into like deeper into prediction markets, where it's like, man, all these pundits can just like say all these things and have no consequences. But like if someone were to like retroactively like look at all of their predictions and like give Stephen A. Smith a Briar score, like I'm sure that would be like, they would look horrible. But you actually did this here, and I think that's like why this thread is really cool. So really appreciate you sharing some of that methodology.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Stephen A. Smith thing is funny. I mean, isn't he trying to run for president or something?
Probably, and there's probably a market somewhere for that.
There's probably a market somewhere.
He's on the poly market for Demnom 2028. But
is he actually? Like, hold up, probably market
totally.
Stephen. That's crazy.
It reminds me of like you're talking about kind of holding pundits or just anyone on the internet who's making noise about anything. People have hot takes all the time. Being able to hold them to account, like you're both talking about. I feel like one of the only historical instances of this is that somebody set up the inverse Kramer ETF. Here, Kramer could say anything about anything, pretty easily backtest it or test it in real time.
Right.
Although I think I saw recently that actually the inverse Kramer ETF is not performing that well. So
okay.
Perhaps
he figured it out.
Real-time score now of his punditry, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think I think that stuff is really important, especially now, right? Like, I think the kind of information warfare that occurs on the timeline daily now has like monetary value, right? So the amount of information that people used to be able to say anything without consequence, right? But now these talking heads, these pundits have a lot of influence on prices of real markets, of real betting things, even if they're not necessarily aware of it. And I think being able to keep these people accountable for what they say, for what they're predicting, and being able to keep that public record is good, not only for just keeping track of what is real and the discussion around certain events and markets, but also just to see who's right most of the time and who to believe.
Totally. Yeah, there's a reputation aspect to this where, we should get better thought leaders as a result of being able to have a kind of credit score associated with their actual predictions. And your use of AI to actually do this, I do think is fascinating, because my first thought when I saw your thread was, how did he even go about doing this? Like, did you just rewatch the entire playlist? Man has a lot of content, there's a lot of content in that geostrategy playlist.
I mean, I did watch it. Yeah, I was just kind of going along with it at 2 times speed.
Right.
Yeah.
Nice. And did you factor in like the number of times that the professor made any certain prediction, or you were just really just looking for kind of well-defined predictions?
Yeah, so both of those things played a big role. Like in the second one, actually, this is I'm kind of going over the core arguments of Professor Zhang. And his core arguments are Donald Trump will win the 2024 election. This is the principal prediction that everything else is hinging on, right? If Donald Trump does not win the 2024 election, in his worldview, none of this happens, right? So obviously, this has the most weight in terms of actually happening. The United States will go to war with Iran is another kind of pillar of his predictions. The U.S. national debt is unsustainable is another thing that he routinely brings up across lectures. Same with Russia will win the war in Ukraine and the American economy will falter. So all these predictions were routinely stated throughout all of his lectures, which is why I decided to look at them specifically, because he makes a lot of claims. He makes a few other claims, like some other VP candidate will run with Trump, but the kind of his strategy or his worldview is not hinging on that. So yeah, that's a kind of the philosophy of choosing these arguments.
Very nice, very nice. Let's get into the individual results for those.
Yeah, so obviously the Trump did win. That was the first thing that first domino, I suppose. And the way that I'm getting the prices for all of these markets is I'm looking at the time when the videos were released. So they were released around like May 1st, I think. And then I'm looking at the prices of these markets when that video was released, right? So in this case, Donald Trump, yes, is 45 cents. And then it resulted in a yes. So the payback is, $1 per share or whatever. So if we consume or presume that he's, investing $2,000 into this election winning, he made back about 4,200. So pretty good return.
And sorry, why for the backtest methodology did this market get a $2,000 bet size?
Because there was two different relevant markets. So there was one where Donald Trump would win the election, and then the other one, there was another market where the Republicans would win the election. Yeah. So we did. Those were the two, and the reason I should have kind of mentioned this before.
Parlay.
Not necessarily a parlay. They had slightly different odds for some reason. I think like the Republican Party winning was like 50%, but then Trump was 45.5. So it might be like a weird little hedge.
Right.
But yeah, that's why I chose the two. And I also felt like it would be a bit weighted, better weighting, I suppose, in the total
Totally.
results. Yeah.
Any thoughts, Matt? Should we keep going into the next predictions?
No, it makes sense. Yeah, let's keep going.
The United States will go to war with Iran in 2026.
Yeah, so this is a really interesting one. This one is kind of a extrapolation of how at the time, this is from last year in 2024. He's basing a lot of his assumptions about how the United States will approach Iran based on Ukraine and how it's approached Ukraine and the Russian-Ukraine war. And he felt at the time that the Ukrainian war was a failure for the Biden administration, and that the U.S. was visibly on the world stage losing its grip on its military dominance, right? By allowing Russia to come in and take Ukraine. So he believed that the reason that the United States will go to war with Iran is as a show of strength, right? Like to set themselves on the pedestal of military dominance that the U.S. has once inhabited. And there's a few other factors he brings up a lot. The Israel-Gaza war as another issue that was being reflected in like U.S. policymaker decisions and stuff like that. And there's a lot of back and forth context between Iran and Israel. So this one I decided to look at some of the existing markets, on Polymarket and Kalshi. So I decided to look at, will the U.S. declare war on Iran, U.S. forces in Iran, new U.S.-Iran nuclear deal, United States meets with Iran before July, and will Iran close the Strait of Hormuz? Is that how you pronounce it? Hormuz?
I think so. Hormuz.
You've got it.
Okay, cool. But yeah, so this was just, I should also note that a lot of these markets were opened after the Iran strikes. So the places were kind of excited and inflated. And, for each of those, we bet $1,000. And
a few of these have not yet resolved. How are you?
A few of these are not. Yeah, so I'm looking at the current price based on the shares at the time of the thread. Yeah. So, for example, you can see the U.S. Iran nuclear deal one in the photo. You would buy in, I think, at like 70-ish cents, and it would go up to 86 cents. So if you sold now, you would have like a 10-cent profit per share.
A nice return there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Let's get to his next claim. The U.S. national debt is unsustainable.
Yeah, this is another one that he places a lot of, not necessarily that much emphasis on, but he believes that the U.S. debt will not be a solvable issue. He believes that the current trajectory of its growth will have a lot of like impacts on the average person, as well as the kind of way that the war might unfold with Iran, and that it could cause like a lot of economic shock. This one was pretty simple. Again, it was betting yes on the national debt being above 38,000 or 38 trillion. Sorry, and then no on the deficit being smaller in 2025. Both are still unresolved, but we're kind of approaching.
Yeah, I'm shocked that the will total U.S. debt be above 38 trillion is only trading at 82 cents. It feels weirdly.
It might be a bit higher. Oh no! Wow, it went down.
Remarkably, it's lower. Okay,
that's crazy.
Interesting market.
I was just gonna ask if that's what like the actual ticker looked like on Kalshi. It's kind of funny.
Though interestingly, you can only, I think like the bid ask is only selling yeses at 86 for some reason.
Oh, I see.
So yeah.
Right. I see. So they're
pretty
finding...
interesting.
Wait, why are they?
I like that one contract sitting there for 79 cents, just hanging out, just holding the line.
Right. Yeah, somebody's earning rewards, bro. That's what that is, right?
Just farming rewards, yeah. Maybe.
Yeah. Fascinating market. I won't rabbit hole on it too much because we could probably spend the entire rest of your time just talking about this one. My intuition is that it feels low at 77.
I think so too. I agree. I think that, like this one is really interesting. I think all the debt ones are really interesting. I also love the little counter that it has.
That's
I haven't seen that on other markets, but
it makes it feel incredibly live to have that counter there as you're looking then at the predicted odds.
Yeah.
Totally. So that's a good market. One thing you're having to do is you backtest his claims. And what I think is interesting about your methodology is like, it is a fascinating thing, like Matthew mentioned, to do, or like you mentioned, to do with a ton of other public figures. You can imagine doing this with a ton of public figures.
Right.
But there's some creativity needed, I think, in finding which markets do associate with their top claims and needing kind of, sometimes the market maybe has a little more specificity in terms of timeline, perhaps, than, a pundit or a YouTuber would share.
Right.
And you do have to do that translation, but I think you've done it well here.
Yeah, it was really, this is another thing that I kind of wanted to bring up. The method of finding the markets was really interesting, because the current, it's more of a technical issue. The current APIs for, Polymarket and Kalshi have very limited search abilities. So what I did to find the relevant markets was I used AI to get the predictions, isolate the individual predictions, and then create keywords based on those predictions that might be used in these markets. And then I made 10 keywords for every single prediction, and then I kind of cycled through all those different keywords for every single prediction, and then I chose the markets based on the frequency of them showing up from going through every single keyword, if that makes sense.
What you're trying to do is map Kalshi markets with Polymarket markets. Is that what you're doing?
No. Just for the predictions in general, right? I wanted to be able to find the relevant markets for each prediction. So what I was doing was for each prediction, I was deriving keywords from that for each prediction, and then
Wow.
using 10, from all those keywords, collecting the times that a market appeared, and then using that to kind of make the final decisions on what relevant markets were.
Nice. I love that you mentioned this because actually right before you hopped on, Josiah and I were talking about this, where I was wondering about or thinking about a project where you get the semantic embeddings of these like market titles between both like Cauchy and Polymarket, and do some kind of like percent similarity or some kind of like clustering to be like, because you're right, like the search is tough, like, and you don't really know, like
search is really tough. Yes,
there are some like recommended like markets on the side, but I feel like there's probably a better way to like semantically like cluster all of them and across markets too, which would be really cool. But
yeah, I think I was trying to solve this because I have another like a Twitter extension that allows you to like it creates embedding like.
Sorry, it's somewhere. Yeah,
it's somewhere at the bottom. No, that's my API router. I have a Twitter extension that lets you see relevant markets for different tweets and stuff like that.
Very cool.
And the way that I'm doing that is I'm creating embeddings for every single tweet, and it actually does work. It's just super expensive, but the search thing is really important because market discovery is going to be such a big thing, especially as it gets more embedded into these social feeds like what Fireplace GG is doing, or all these other kind of like L2s. And I think that there's if you can solve it, you have a good product.
Absolutely. Yeah. To be honest with you, market discovery was maybe even part of like Matt and I's motivation to start doing the pod. It's like there's so many interesting markets. There's not a very good way to put them in front of people. It's like a Netflix-sized catalog, I feel like, of content, and they have the same user discovery problem of like there's something for everyone, and it's a real kind of classic product problem, I guess.
Too many unknown unknowns. Like I didn't even know I wanted to listen to Cardi B's album until we're seeing whether or not she'd hit #1. Which, by the way, that market's at 99 right now. I think people are very
seriously
with it. Yeah, I think she's like broke the Guinness World Record. By the way, just because I know you mentioned that it was too high.
Wow. You got it. Do you want to walk through the other predictions here, or do you want to get into, we kind of wanted to ask you about the API project you were doing. Maybe let's just talk about some of the conclusions from your backtesting.
Yeah, I guess I'll summarize the other ones. The other ones were kind of secondary effects, and had not necessarily less to do with his main predictions. But he believes that Russia will win the Ukraine war, which is not panned out very well. This is kind of his biggest misstep. He believed that Russia would be get the territory that's already ceded from Ukraine, and be recognized and such, but that hasn't happened yet. And then the other prediction that he makes is that the American economy will falter, which you can argue is still in motion. There hasn't been really any significant movement in that one. So overall, though, the thing, he ended up making, I think, 27% returns if you consider the prices at the time of the thread being finished. And he generally just had a very decent world model. I think that he made the most money on the Trump winning the election, as it had, I guess, the most relative weight, as well as the United States going to war with Iran. But I think the crucial thing that I wanted to emphasize with this thread is that there's your edge in this case is your world model, right? Like the ability to analyze current events, extrapolate those out using a objective world model based on not only the past history, but thinking about it from this game theory perspective, where you're imagining all these individual actors, you're imagining what their motives are, why they will do these things, and if you just stick to that and you practice that, you can make some money. It doesn't have to be gambling. I mean, it is, but to some degree. But
predictive edge is real, and
predictive edge is totally real. Yes.
Yeah, you're right to characterize it as his world model. It's almost like it's informed by his study of history and his like expertise in game theory. And he's gamed out. I mean, he does it live in his videos, right? He games out a lot of these things to arrive at these conclusions. But then, to your point, he has these grand narratives almost in the back of his head for certain things, like the decline of the West, the collapse of
Right.
an economy. And then those are almost subliminally informing, his perspective on other things because he has this foundational model, right?
Yeah, and the grand narratives, you can argue their relevance, I suppose, right? Like he definitely has this like especially with the war in Ukraine stuff, he had this grand narrative that kind of failed him. But I think that the grander picture was fairly successful, and that the way that, at least in the medium term, it's like 1 year time frame, he was fairly accurate with this kind of momentum game theory based strategy. So
Absolutely. It'd be cool to revisit too some of these predictions and his other predictions as we go into the future. Are you taking requests for who to backtest next? Because I have a great rec for you.
I've been offered a few, but I would gladly take any.
Are you familiar with Leopold Aschenbrenner?
I'm not. I don't think so.
So this is like I think he was on one of the alignment teams for one of the major labs. I think he was at OpenAI on their alignment team.
Interesting. Okay.
Published this absolute diatribe, this absolute manifesto a couple years ago. It's like 5 or 6 per 10 parts, whatever it is.
Wow. Okay.
Called Situational Awareness: The Decade Ahead. So I guess he published this in June 2024, and he makes some very bold claims. One being like the U.S. will nationalize NVIDIA, for instance, is an example of one of his.
Yeah.
A lot of his, I guess his world model would be that he is, an AI maxi. I don't know what you call him. He's very AGI pilled.
Like accelerationist. Yeah.
Absolute accelerationist. And then he builds, he kind of takes a similar approach using game theory to say like, okay, then what then does this mean for geopolitical events? A lot of his predictions, center around US and China relations, as you would expect. There's of course also the like AI 2027 folks who did this.
Yeah, I was gonna say like the stars. I wanted to go back and look at like the Star Slater Codex and like the kind of the entire like Scott Alexander stuff. Because I mean this is kind of this essay actually, AI 2027 was a big inspiration for being interested in kind of history and like the extrapolation of current events. And I think would be really fun to look at in a couple of years.
And they're good examples of instances where people are making fairly specific claims, right? Like this is part of the challenge of what you did backtesting the entire geopolitical series from Professor Zhang is like you do have to tease out what are the actual kind of hard claims being made here. Yeah. The other reason I think the Leopold one would be interesting is like this guy left OpenAI. He started a hedge fund centered on the thesis.
Oh, this is is this the Intel guy?
Yes, he has a shitload of it.
This is the Intel guy.
He has a bunch of core.
You're totally right. You're totally right.
Yeah, all of their, and so people have been copy trading him on Twitter in public markets. Right?
Oh my god, yeah.
And the market, I think, since he started this hedge fund, has done so well. And a lot of it is built on the thesis I think that he describes in situational awareness. But it's done incredibly, incredibly well. Whether or not that's because his thesis is playing out or not, it's probably too early to say.
Oh, okay. No. I actually do know about this. I just didn't recognize the name. Yeah, I can talk about this for a bit.
Totally.
This entire like situational awareness stuff is so interesting because his entire like thesis is again like betting on the AI infrastructure like chain, I suppose. So most of his like, I think it's like 60 or 70% of their fund is like on like what is it, like Intel options or something. Let me see. What is the company?
Let's find it.
Is it Intel? I think it's Intel.
Leopold Aschenbrenner.
But it's like on ridiculous. I think it's like super leveraged as well. I'm shocked. I will be shocked if this doesn't blow up. Honestly, to be fair. Oh my god, yeah, it is Intel. They're up like 40%, I think, in the last month. So
yeah,
absolutely bad lad.
He got right, I think, is that one of the bolder claims, I hope I'm not misstating this, from the original situational awareness paper is that, NVIDIA will become so important that the U.S. will fully I missed the word. Nationalize it, that we will be burying GPUs in the mountains in the Rockies, right? Because large data centers will be, target sites in a conflict between the U.S. and China,
Yeah,
etc.
yeah.
But when he made this, I mean, a lot of people were like, "What is this guy on? Like, what is this guy talking?" And
Right.
yet, here we are, a year later, and the U.S. has taken a chunk of Intel, which is kind of an unprecedented move. It's kind of like,
definitely.
he got a part of this right. He kind of got the company wrong, I suppose, and it's not a full nationalization, but
Mhm.
thematically, there's some accuracy there.
Right. And I think that like this is really interesting because I don't think anybody saw the 10% Intel buyout from the US government coming.
Right.
But I guess like in hindsight, it makes a lot of sense because the kind of AI like supply chain is so dependent on like Taiwan and the Taiwanese semiconductor company not getting invaded because without them you need the entire AI supply chain falters. So I guess the shift to Intel and relying on other manufacturers make total sense. And I think that his thesis in general is pretty solid. There's a lot of like AI chip companies that are coming to like Arizona and like the Sun Belt area that are really kind of taking root and getting to bringing the manufacturing back to the U.S.
Yeah. And if you have conviction in a thing, like the Professor Jang has a conviction in a few kind of ideas, or Leopold has conviction in AGI. I think his AGI timeline's super short, right? So
Super
that's his.
compressed, yeah.
You can then, if you just think about a thing for a while, you can arrive at a ton of other conclusions. Like, yeah, okay, if AGI is 2 years away or something, of course we would start nationalizing these companies. Of course, this other thing. The thing that happened like yesterday or earlier this week is we also just took a chunk of Lithium Americas. I don't
Oh,
know if you guys.
really? I didn't hear about this.
Trump administration seeks equity stake in Canadian miner for rare earths of some kind. This is some component. I don't know. I won't pretend to know exactly what lithium
Interesting.
does. It's like a lithium mining company, and so the saga continues, and it also kind of plays back into that AI narrative. And yeah, if AGI is a possibility and would also be seen as a have weapon potential, like you can really start to just game out how things will go, and that's
Right.
a lot of what his paper does. So please backtest Leopold.
I honestly like if you could send me that on Twitter, I definitely will. Situational
Totally.
awareness. Let me see. Perfect.
Come back on the pod sometime and we can do it live. We'd
Okay.
love to dig deeper into your process.
If you guys want, I was gonna screen share this, but we got kind of off track. I have
Please.
Yeah.
the little the spreadsheet of all the results that I kind of translated. It's pretty simple, but if you would like, I can share it.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Let's see. All right, let me screen share. I guess
This is a 3 markets exclusive, folks. We have the
3
full
markets exclusive. Yeah, exactly.
dang L sheet here.
It's pretty simple. So these are the the different core predictions, and then these are the markets or the tickers for the markets that I found.
Nice.
Links to it, and then the price, at the start of the market, and then now color coded or whatever, bought shares, and then profits and stuff like that.
Nice.
So pretty simple. Yeah, this is the original that I extracted a lot of the information from. So each video I went through, identified all the big predictions, the reasoning, and this was all done using Gemini 2.5 Pro, to be able to extract it. Got all the keywords.
You need that video sized context window, huh?
Oh, I was actually
yeah,
just going to mention I'm glad that I see that you're using within the cell calling Gemini as like a function or like a Google Sheet.
Oh
function.
yeah. No, I think it was this. I love
it's so
Gemini.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't
so
know
it's a
okay.
Yeah, in Google
Great.
Sheets, you could call it.
That's
you can call it like within it's kind of annoying because if you like mention anything that's kind of like remotely touchy, it's gonna be like, sorry, I can't help you with that.
Oh, I see.
Or something like that. But it's otherwise it's totally fine. But it's very useful for things like this where you have a large amount of semantic data, and you need to get this kind of pretty routine keyword stuff or whatever. But yeah, that's kind of the oh yeah, and then I use the prediction groups and stuff like that. So, but yeah,
So
that's kind of the little behind the scenes.
if you have time, can I ask one more question about it? And then if you have one, Matt, that's fine too. But I have one that I'm not going to ask, which is like, do you think a person who has a world model like you're talking about and
Mm-hmm.
has some conviction in a few macro theses, does that actually translate to being good in hyper specific? Like the prediction market forces you to get more specific with timeline, with just the levels of nuance of exactly what it is you're trying to predict. Is that the same skill exactly?
I think that they're different skills. I think I think the skill of predicting an outcome is its own thing, but then predicting the timeline of events, or like the whether it's going to occur within a time frame, is kind of a different thing. Like you can say that the U.S. will fall for XYZ reasons, but it's an entirely other thing to say when,
Yeah.
not just that it will. I think that you can get better at placing these events in a specific time frame, just through trial and error, I guess. I big thing that I sorry, I'm getting a bunch of calls.
No, you're
Let
good.
me stop screen sharing. But I think that the big thing that you can take away is that you can predict the outcome fairly routinely. The real skill is again predicting things within that time frame. And I think a big influence for me was the Super Forecasting book by Philip.
Mhm.
I'm forgetting his last name, but he goes through a process of talking about the Good Judgment Project, which is an organization for predicting these events within like a specific time frame, and calculating Breyer's score and stuff like that. And he has a very grounded method. So I think that it's learnable, which is why I got into this.
Nice. Yeah, it kind of sounds like a little bit of what I heard from what you said was like there's one thing to actually predict an outcome, and then let me know if I'm reading too much in between the lines, but like it's another skill to say like are the odds that I see for this market priced correctly? Like you may not know
Oh
like what
yeah,
the outcome's going to be, but like maybe it's like okay, this is showing 20%, I actually think it's 40%, that's going to be the value I capture. Whether or not the outcome takes place is going to be up to that 40% that I believe this outcome is.
yeah. I think that's a good separation, or like distinction. Yeah, those again, I think like those are very different skills. Like you can I learned that through sports betting as well. You can be right. You can be right, but still like not be capturing like proper value or whatever, or you could be getting like bad prices for different lines and stuff like that, even if you're right 100% of the time, because that'll bite you in the long run. So yeah, I think there's a lot of different skills that you can get to learn, but
Yeah, there's like a difference between having a like sort of macro level abstract correct prediction and then somehow executing that into a tradable strategy. Like public
yes,
finance market traders have this problem all the time, even with earnings. And Polymarket introducing earnings markets will be interesting because I've had instances where I'm confident a company will beat earnings. I
mm-hmm.
place a options bet on the company to beat earnings. The company, in fact, beats earnings, but some macro event pulls the entire market down the next day. Something I didn't consider, and so I was right in my sort of hypothesis, but wrong in my like execution strategy.
Right.
And it's interesting the same kind of it exists.
I love Martin Shkreli. Martin Shkreli, like his documenting of like shorting all these like bio
Right.
companies and
I like
like quantum companies, and then he's like, I'm like down like $1 million today, but my like strategy is right. And then he ends up being right eventually down the line, but in the short term, in the micro, he can
Right.
be down a
Yeah.
lot. So
Shkreli's model is failing, I think, to account for certain like societal trends. Like Shkreli would do great as a fundamental analyst. He's not
mhm.
wrong to your point. But the market can probably be irrational longer than he
Long-
can.
longer than he's solvent. Yeah,
Right.
he's just a
Right.
hater. He's a hater, and I appreciate that about him.
Yeah. Presumably someday those quantum stocks will crater, but
Someday. Yeah. But all right.
Well, Caliph, this was great. Thank you so much for coming on 3 Marks. We got to have you on again.
For sure.
And we'll follow you on X until then.
Okay, cool. Thank you so